again, and we will start all over again, and we'll build something that was even better than we had before, recognizing that so many people have died. So many people have died. That's the one thing we can't do anything about, unfortunately. What I can say is if we did it the different way, if we went herd, if we just said, let's wing it, we would have been talking about numbers that would have been unsustainable and unacceptable. You look on the screens, you look on television today, and you see body bags, and you see mass graves, and we may be talking about 95,000 people ultimately. We may be talking about something more than that. But if you take a low number, 1.5 million, so you multiply whatever number we're talking about times 15, it would not be acceptable. It would not. It's not acceptable now. One person isn't acceptable, let alone perhaps 100,000. So we're going to rebuild it. We're going to rebuild it back as fast as we can. I think we're going to have an incredible transition, but transition leads to fourth quarter. Third quarter, I call it transition. We'll start to see it. It's already happening. People want to come back. I think everybody in this room realizes we have to come back. Otherwise, you have a broken country. You'll never be able to do it again. You'll never be able to build this miracle. It's a miracle what we did, what all of us did, and what many people before us did. You'll never be able to build it again. The people want to come back. You see what's going on at state houses all over the country. They want to come back. I think some people don't want it really to come back for political reasons, which is sick. But the people, the real people, the people that want this country to be great and great again, we can say, they want to get back. And we're going to have embers, we're going to have fires, we're going to have things to put out, and we'll put them out. We learned a lot, things that we had no idea 2 months ago. We've learned a lot over the last couple of months, and we're going to do a job like nobody's seen before. And I spoke with Angela Merkel today. I spoke with Prime Minister Abe of Japan. I spoke with many of the leaders over the last 4 or 5 days. And so many of them, almost all of them, I would say all of them, not everybody want to admit it, but they all view us as the world leader, and they're following us. You look at what we've done with ventilators. We started, we had no ventilators. Nobody thought in terms of a ventilator. It's like, and I say it all the time, it's like building a car, and other countries don't have ventilators. And we became so successful at ventilators and building this very complex machine, very expensive machine, but very, very complex to have it right, to do it right. Highly computerized, very technologically significant. So we built, and we built, and we built. And they took other factories for totally other purposes, and now we have 9 factories that are throwing out ventilators at numbers that nobody can believe. It was really, there's not been anything like that since the Second World War, where we did the same thing with other types of product. And we're giving thousands and thousands away to other countries that are people dying because they don't have ventilators and they're not equipped to do what we did. So we're giving thousands and thousands of these ventilators away to many countries that have suffered greatly. Italy, France, Spain, so many countries. And Nigeria called. Tremendous problems in Nigeria. Tremendous problems all over. And so they're very happy. In addition to that, we're building stockpiles for ourselves. So if this disaster ever happens again, we have plenty. Some of the governors, we're working along great with almost all of the governors, but some of them, they needed ventilators. Now it's testing, and we have testing at a level that nobody's ever done before. Every leader tells us the same thing. In fact, they want to know, what are we doing? But you don't hear that from the media. You never hear that. But what's happened with testing is incredible. So as of this morning, we've done 8.5 million tests. And yesterday alone, in one day, we did 300,000 tests. And that's an incredible tribute. Now they have the test where it takes you 5 minutes. That was a test that didn't even exist. Everything had to go to a lab. it would be sent to the lab, so it takes a day, and then it takes another day, but it takes you 3, 4, 5 days if they do a good job. Now you do a test, boom, and you have it in 5 minutes, and nobody ever thought a thing like that was even possible. That's the Abbott Laboratories, but now we have other competitive tests even with that. So what we've done has been incredible. We're going to continue to do it. We're going into transition, and I call it transition to greatness. It's going to be transition to greatness, because we're going to do something very fast, and we're going to have a phenomenal year next year. Third quarter transition, fourth quarter is going to be good. There's tremendous pent-up demand, and next year we're going to have a phenomenal year. And with that, I think maybe I'd like to go around the room, and you could introduce yourself and say a few words, and then after that, the media will leave, and we'll have some discussions among ourselves, okay? Please, why don't we start? I think I know this gentleman, huh? And by the way, Kevin has done some job. He should have had the job a long time before he had it. But that's okay. We have a great man, and he's going to be, hopefully, a great Speaker of the House. We got to get him there. If we get him there, and when I say hopefully we're going to win, because I have no doubt he'll be a great Speaker of the House. We don't have to hope about anything. He's done a fantastic job. Kevin?
Well, Mr. President, I do want to say one thing. As you and the First Lady were out there honoring what transpired 75 years ago, that we had to end the tyranny of what Hitler was doing throughout Europe. We now battle something that is like a war. That this is a virus that came from a distant land that we did not invite. But just as we had to transform our country then and unite, that leadership you're providing is doing just that. As you talk about ventilators, gearing up, testing, more than 1.7 million in 1 week. The ingenuity of this country will solve this problem. And we will not just solve and get a vaccine for us, but for the rest of the world. I do want to thank you, coming from California. I know I have a blue state, I know I have a governor, but the way you've worked together, watching you send those Navy ships to New York and to California, build those hospitals in a time of need, I do want to thank you on behalf of everyone in California.
Thank you very much. Great state. Thank you very much. Elise?
I think they'll turn it on.
Thank you, Mr. President, for all of the support for New York State. This has been a true partnership, and the administration has stepped up, whether it's ventilators or building the Javits Center, which was tremendously important. My district in upstate New York, people are eager to get back to work safely. Our tourist businesses, our hotels have been devastated. So as we talk about this transition, making sure that we allow our small businesses to get back to work safely is so incredibly important. Also, our farmers. Thank you to Secretary Perdue for stepping up. We have dairy farmers in our district who are going through a crisis, but we know that you support the farmers, and we're appreciative of all of your work for New York. And I know you've worked effectively with Democrats and Republicans in New York State, so thank you.
Thank you very much. And so for the farmers, you know, we gave $12 billion 2 years ago from China through tariffs because they were targeting our farmers. And then we gave $16 billion, and this year we're giving $19 billion to the farmers. And that's more money than they've ever even thought about. And it's keeping them in a position where, really a position of strength, but they deserve it, what they've gone through for 18, 19 years. This isn't a new phenomenon. This is for years they've been ripped off. So we're taking care of our farmers. Thank you very much, Elise.
Thank you.
Dan, please.
Oh, thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for having us here, and thank you for working every single day. You know, Speaker Pelosi would have the America believe that we can only show up to Congress to vote once every 3 weeks. Of course, that's not true. We could be working every single day, just like this administration is, and I appreciate what you've done. Appreciate working with us to protect our energy industry. You know, America is in real dire straits with oil prices the way they are. We're deeply worried about that in Texas, and your administration's been excellent to work with on that front. We understand how important energy independence is to our nation. You know, Texas is reopening, and I think it can be a model for the rest of the country as we step out of retreat and move to actually confront this virus head on and get people back to work.
Well, it's interesting, Dan, because oil prices are now going up and gasoline prices are going down. That's like the best combination I've ever heard. So our millions of people in the energy business, I think, is going to be, you know, that's moving up. But you look at those gasoline prices, and they're really coming down. So I don't think I've ever seen a combination like that. It's going to be very good. A lot of good things happening in energy. Jared, you should say something, because you headed up our whole ventilator problem that this country had. The cupboard was bare when we took it over. People don't realize it, they don't want to say it, but the cupboard was bare, that we had nothing. And I could say that for the military too. Dan would know that almost better than anybody, and the folks that are so much and so well versed on military, but our military cupboard was bare also. We had obsolete equipment, we had old equipment, and now we have, we've never been in a position like this. We have the best equipment in the world, all made in the United States. But Jared, why don't you give a little talk on what we did with the ventilators and how that just became such an incredible story. And we're doing the same thing with testing, and we're pretty close to a point where we're equally as good. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. On ventilators now, the good news is that every day the balance that we have in the stockpile that the country has continues to grow. Initially, it was very scary in that we had a lot of states requesting numbers that could not be supplied, and a lot of you were very helpful at getting the local hospitals in your districts to give the actual data to the federal government, because the president wanted to make sure that anybody in this country who needed a ventilator would get a ventilator. He saw what was happening in Italy, where people were dying in hospitals and not able to get the care they needed, and the president said, I don't want that to happen in America. Deploy every resource that we have, get all the intel we have, and let's do our best to try to make it work. And we were able to make it work thanks to your leadership. And then what we were also able to do is use the Defense Production Act at the president's urging, and we were able to contract 11 different ventilator companies. Last year, America made about 30,000 ventilators. This year, we'll make about 150,000 in a 4-month period. And so we're in a place right now where we're doing well. A lot of our allies, the countries that are friendly with America, are starting to get ventilators from us, and we have more than enough to take care of all the American citizens. So it's been a great success story. And on testing, the numbers continue to grow. We have all the supplies that we need to do it. We've now educated all the governors. We have over 5,000 testing machines in the city. We've had the commercial sector through the public-private partnerships that the president had us lead. Those have now identified over 5,000 machines. We've done DPA on swabs, so we're making a ton of swabs. We have reagents. We have transport media. We've been working with all the governors to help them with the National Guard on how to better collect samples. And so we're seeing those numbers starting to really rise. And when you look at the number that America's done relative to any other country, we're 2 to 3 times the next number. So on an absolute basis, the job that you've led on that has been absolutely tremendous, and that's giving the tools to America to start opening up these counties and allowing Americans to get back to work.
Thank you, Jared. You've done a great job. Someday people are going to appreciate it. They say, oh, he's a relation. Well, he's a relation. If he wasn't a good relation, I'd get him out of here so fast. Sometimes we have a problem, Louis. I say, get Jared on it. Great job, Jared.
Thank you.
Smart guy. So here's another smart guy. So Devin, I think I thought about Devin more over the last couple of days than anybody else, because this guy would come in and he'd tell people what was going on, and nobody believed it because it was not believable. It wasn't true that they would be doing a takeover of a presidency illegally, and all of the illegality that was going on. And he was the first one, our superstar Jim, and all of us will admit this guy was just, he wouldn't stop. Devin Nunes, he wouldn't stop. He saw it before anybody, and you deserve a medal. You deserve the equivalent of Pulitzer Prizes. They ought to take the Pulitzer Prize away from all of these phony journalists that got a Pulitzer Prize, and they were wrong. They were wrong on everything, and now they've been proven wrong. I saw where Clapper, not a smart guy. How do you have not a smart person heading up intelligence? How does that work, right? You have a man who is not smart, and he heads up intelligence, and that's possibly what happened. They ran away with it, but he knew what was going on, and I'd watch him on television. He'd say the worst things. And now I know why Shifty Schiff, dishonest, corrupt politician, why this guy didn't want these papers exposed. Because all these people said under oath, where they go to jail if they lie, they were totally, no, I didn't see any collusion with Russia. I saw nothing. No, I said, but he was on television before and after saying there was massive collusion, like Putin was my best friend. We had no calls to Russia. We had no calls from Russia for years. And all of a sudden, we have this great friendship. And by the way, getting along with Russia is a great thing. Getting along with Putin and Russia is a great thing. And stuff like this makes it impossible. And that leads to very bad things, very bad things. But I have to say that Devin was incredible. He understood it. He understood that it was a hoax before anybody else knew what was happening. And then I have to say, the people in this room took over and did a hell of a job with you, right? They had guts. They had guts like nobody's ever seen before. I want to thank you on behalf of our country, and I'd like to have you say a few words.
Well, thank you, Mr. President, and it's unfortunate what you had to live through for the last 4 years.
Yeah.
From your campaign to your presidency, and I appreciate your kind words, and for all the folks in here who have worked so hard getting to the bottom of the Russia hoax situation. Let me just talk a little bit about the situation our country's in now. I know you're well aware. We've had 6-7 weeks here of keeping people inside their homes. We've learned a lot about this virus. There's still a lot more we need to learn. We need to learn what our friends over in Asia were doing at the time that this virus was taking off, and the issues with the World Health Organization. And I believe with your new pick, with John Ratcliffe, member of the House Intelligence Committee, member from Texas, he's going to do a great job getting to the bottom of this, and I think leading the intelligence agencies through what have been some pretty dark times over the last few years.
And I think we should say Rick Grinnell has done a great job, too. In fact, John Ratcliffe called up 2 days ago. He said, you know, I'm really looking forward to this, but I don't know if I can top the guy we have in there right now. And he was, he's going to do a phenomenal job, but Rick Grinnell has been incredible. Before that, we had an empty seat. We had an empty seat, but Rick Grinnell, what he's done, even Louis would admit that. And I saw Rick yesterday walking in with thousands of pages of paper into the Justice Department. We didn't see that before, did we, Louis, huh? Rick Grinnell did a great job, and John is going to be phenomenal. Please.
Well, Mr. President, what we expect, and the American people expect, is transparency from our law enforcement agencies, and I think we're well on our way to getting that. I want to also thank you for bringing us back here to show the American people that we can be here and do our work. The Democrats are cowering at home right now. And it makes no sense because we've learned so much. I can understand for the first few weeks, but we're learning. We have ventilators. We're learning new ways how to treat this virus. And if we're expecting, as you know, you've been in my district. It's the San Joaquin Valley of California, heavy agricultural area. My folks have been going to work. My folks have been going to work, and because they have to feed this country along with a lot of the folks around here. And you know, if we expect the guys that are cutting meat or working at a grocery store, working in these packing plants, if we expect them to go to work, we ought to go to work as members of Congress. And I'll just leave it at that.
I will say I got you all of your permits necessary from the federal government for water. You know, we throw millions of gallons a day of water into the Pacific Ocean that comes from up north. And when I saw Devin, I say, how come those fields are all barren? They're beautiful land, all barren, brown. And then they'll have a little patch like this, a little patch in a corner, or a little patch on one side, and it's beautiful green. You could see it was so, and I said, how come so much of it, 90%, 95%, it looks like a desert, and you have this? He said, we don't have water. I said, you mean you have a drought? This was a long time ago we met, right? Right at the beginning, before I got elected. And I said, you mean you have a drought? He said, no, we don't have a drought. We send millions of gallons of water out to the ocean to protect a very, well, I'll never say anything's unimportant. I think everything's important. To protect, go ahead, what's the name?
The smelt, Delta smelt. Yeah.
So you have a Delta smelt that's not doing well. It's getting no water, and it will do a lot better if it had water. But they send millions and millions of it. Is that seriously, is that the only reason? That's the reason they send it out there?
Yeah, that and,
for the Delta
that and salmon, yes.
It's
so
incredible.
The farmers are very thankful for recognizing the important work that you've done, not only in San Joaquin Valley, but all over the country. And I'll just say that's why they're out working, and I think we should be working. And I'm
well, you know,
brought us here.
with the water, though, I said, so what has to happen? Well, you need approvals from Congress, from this, from you need all sorts of approvals, but you need it from Commerce more importantly than anything. I got every approval for you. and you get a lot of the state approvals done through Kevin and yourself and others. All you need now is a signature of the governor. And those millions of gallons of wasted water going into the Pacific, that's like a drop in the bucket, doesn't mean anything to the Pacific. All of that water would come right down all the way into Los Angeles. And you know, in Los Angeles, I had a house in Los Angeles, I sold it. You know why I sold it? Because Secret Service says you can't come here anymore. I said I might as well sell it. But I had a house and you couldn't have water. You couldn't water your grass. They said, oh, you're not allowed to water your grass. And then you look at this massive turn. They had a turn. It takes a day to turn it, like a big faucet. And they turn it, and it veers all the water out into the Pacific. It's crazy. So we're all set, except you need Gavin's signature. If you get Gavin's signature, you're going to have water from Los Angeles all the way up. And it's the most incredible thing I've ever seen. I thought it was a drought. I said, he said, no, we have tremendous amounts of water, but we send it out to the Pacific Ocean. And it was over the smelt. So if you can get his signature.
Well, I know you know, during this time of crisis, we need to work with the governor, and I thank you for working with our governor, who's obviously not a supporter of yours. But there is a serious issue there that the governor needs to recognize that we have a water crisis in our state that you've recognized, and he needs to drop the lawsuits that he's brought and work with us.
Well, we've gotten along very well, Gavin Newsom. We've gotten very well with regard to COVID-19, as we call it. In that respect, he's been fantastic, and we've been fantastic, and he said very generous things. But on other things, we disagree, like the water. Like cars, because you can have a car for much less money that's equally good environmentally, but much safer, better car. California forces you to build a bad car that doesn't work well, and there are a lot of reasons for not doing it that way. So we'll end up. So on that we don't agree, but we agree on the coronavirus, and on that we've gotten along very well, and we've done a great job for California and for everybody. And he was very honest about that assessment. It would be great if you could get the water, but you're all set, okay? You're all set. Just, I say that to Kevin, too. Get his signature, and you're going to have so many, all those thousands of acres are going to be opened up, and they'll have plenty of water for Los Angeles, too. So they won't have to ration. They're going to ration the water in California. It's the most incredible thing I've ever seen, and yet they're sending millions of gallons out. So thank you very much, but thank you thank you very much for the job you've done. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Please.
Ted Budd, North Carolina.
Yes.
I want to thank you for having me here. I also want to thank my colleagues from the House. There is no vote today. There's nothing we're voting on. The Speaker Pelosi, has not brought us in to do anything meaningful, but we're here to lead by example and to say that we're ready to work. So we need something meaningful to help those back home. In North Carolina, we're very grateful for all the work that you've done here. And again, Secretary Mnuchin, want to thank you as well for all that you've done. The PPP and the work that you've done for Main Street has helped keep these businesses intact so that we can have this quick recovery. We're ready for Q3. We're ready to get going. In North Carolina, we're ready to rebuild.
Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Guy Reschenthaler from Pennsylvania. I just want to thank you and the administration for holding China accountable. I think for way too long, no one's held China accountable. And the fact that we're looking into the World Health Organization and how they really work hand in glove with the Chinese Communist Party to cover this virus up in the early days is absolutely shameful. So thank you for bringing attention to that. In Pennsylvania, we're having a really hard time because the governor has had such draconian shutdown measures. We're now #1 in unemployment claims, but we're only #5 in terms of population. Instead of protecting the most vulnerable in nursing homes, where you had 65% of the deaths, if not more, in Pennsylvania, he just had a draconian measure, one-size-fits-all approach that lacked any kind of nuance, and it's destroying our economy. While the
taking the loan, so I hope that that'll be backed off a little bit, because it has put people to work that couldn't otherwise. But I'm optimistic, and I wouldn't be if you weren't president, so thank you for the work you're doing.
Thank you, Louis, and you've been a great help. And if we didn't win the election, we wouldn't have found out all of the corrupt practices that are taking place at the top of the FBI with dirty cops and all of the things that we found out about other people in other agencies that are equally as important. All of this, we went on Drain the Swamp, and that's what we're doing. But nobody ever told me the swamp was going to be this vicious or this deep. And we're doing it.
Could I make a suggestion on the justice area? And I know that with the Democrats in charge, some of the most important reforms may not happen, but the FBI is the only law enforcement entity I'm aware of that has not even come into the 20th century, not even asking them to come into the 21st. Everybody else does videotapes, and the FBI interviews witnesses and goes back and records their own notes of what they want to say a witness said, and then it's easily changed. And we need to bring them into the 20th century where they start at least doing some audio recordings so they can't change them. So that's one of the lessons we have seen from what's happened in their effort to create a coup.
And not only do they not record, but they write their notes, and then when the notes are bad for them, they go and change them months later. This is a corrupt deal that's been going on.
Yep.
And we caught them cold, and now we have to see what happens, but Bill Barr has done a great job. He's a strong guy, and he's done a great job, and not easy. He's fighting a lot of fights, but he really has been great, and we appreciate it. But you're right about that. I said, I'd like to hear a tape of what the interview was, and they said, well, no, it was just, and they write it out like scribble.
Yeah.
It's crazy, and then they change it. And they change signatures, they change everything.
So we don't have the old one.
It's one of the most incredible things, isn't it, huh?
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
The most
Well,
powerful guy.
Dan, I say Dan, most powerful man.
I just want to thank everybody in this room for the past 3.5 years for supporting our president and the administration and everything you've done. This man goes 18, 20 hours a day. As many of you know, he's the most transparent president in history. He's the most accessible too. There's nobody in this room that can't call or get through to him, mornings, evenings, midday. But we love you all, and thank you so much in the White House for everything that you've done supporting our president. It means the world. Thank you.
And what a job he's done too, right, Mark? He's been amazing, and he does it himself. I remember when I was running Crooked Hillary, had 28 people. I had Dan, and Dan blew them away. It wasn't even a contest. And we have now, I guess, 6 different sites, platforms, and we have numbers that these people don't have. They don't even come close to it. So when they write false stories, we can go around them, and it's very important to be. Who needs it? I wish we didn't need it, but unfortunately, we have to do that. We have to have that because we don't get an honest press. Please, I'll tell you, Gates, you've been something. He's out there, Devin, right? He's out there fighting.
Thank you,
Go
Mr.
ahead,
President.
Matt.
Your team is here. We're ready to work, and we are inspired by our president. I have observed your willingness to work with anyone. I saw the Democrat governor of New Jersey categorize the administration's response as extremely responsive. I've noted on our calls that our Democrat colleagues in the House, like Tom Suozzi and Jimmy Panetta, have made contributions reflected in the great work that Jared has done on testing and that Secretary Mnuchin has done and that the chief has done as well. But I have to say, Mr. President, I'm deeply concerned about what we're seeing from the Democratic leadership, because in the last several days, they have been caught in a terrible lie. Not only was there no collusion, we now know that the leaders of the Democratic Party knew that there was no collusion at the beginning and willingly lied to the American people anyway. Now we see that they're reverting to their old playbook. As we want to work together to provide provision to our people and take good ideas no matter where they come from, Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer just want to set up new committees to investigate rather than working together. I know that even before being president, you talked about the importance of the president being a great cheerleader for our country and for our economy. I note, and I know in the jobs report today, we can see that even the people who have been furloughed or who are on unemployment now, they're optimistic that this is the team that will bring America back. What advice would you give us to try to have our Democrat leadership behave more like the governors you've worked with and some of the rank and file colleagues who've made helpful suggestions, rather than just reverting to their hatred and their lies to cover their tracks for their last set of lies?
I think they've been doing it so long and gotten away with it for so long prior to us, and they had that 8 years, the Obama 8 years, that have been absolutely terrible. If you look at the Justice Department and what's taken place, you look at the FBI and what's taken place, and frankly, prior to that, a lot of bad things went on. All we can do is keep winning, and if we keep winning, eventually they're going to come around one way or the other. May not be in that form, may not be them, because I'm not sure that you can do that with them. Tremendous dishonesty from Schiff and from others, and they know it's going on. They know these are not stupid people. They know it was a hoax. They know better than anybody in this room it was a hoax. They set it up. They're not aggrieved. I watched Shifty Schiff, 9 inches around the neck, and I watched this guy uses the world's smallest collar, right? But I watched him, I guess this morning, talking about it. He acts so aggrieved, so aggrieved. He knows it was, he got caught. And not only caught, if he weren't in the halls of Congress, he'd be in jail because he made up phony stories and phony speeches and phony, everything was phony. He's a sick man. He's really a sick man, and he's a corrupt politician. So I wouldn't count on somebody like him. But I think overall we have some really good support. I've had great support from Democrat governors. I would say almost all. And in some cases, oh, look, Andrew Cuomo the other day said that we have done a phenomenal job. That's a nice statement, phenomenal, that's a good word. It's true, but we've had great support, and Gavin Newsom, the same thing. He said something, the equivalent of that. So we can work with them, but I think this group is perhaps beyond repair. They're sick. There's something wrong with them. Mark, please.
Well, Mr. President, I know I speak for you, but I just want to thank all of you for setting the example and coming back to Washington, D.C. It's time that we send a message to the American people that we're open for business, we're ready to get back, and we're ready to support a president who has been willing to take the bold moves each and every day to make sure that America's first. So thank you for allowing me to serve, but thank all of you.
Well, I have to, before I introduce Jim, I have to say, so we had all of the great NCAA teams here just prior to COVID. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to come. But we had all of the teams, and one of the teams was the top wrestlers in the country, all the champions, NCAA wrestlers. And I saw him, and I immediately knew it was a wrestling. I could see there was a little action going on with those ears, and the muscles were coming out of the shirts, and I could see by the jawline. And I walked up with Jim Jordan, and they didn't give a damn about the president. They said, that's Jim Jordan. You don't know what a great wrestler, NCAA champion and a great wrestler. And they saw him, those wrestlers saw this guy, and they said, sorry, President, I got to say hello to him first, right? So Jim Jordan, and he's a champ, he's a winner, he knows how to win.
Thank you, Mr. President. The exact same time that we learned what we did about General Flynn, the exact same time we learned that there was absolutely no basis for the entire Mueller Russia investigation that the FBI did, that very time, Nancy Pelosi sets up a select committee to come after you again. And so we just need to understand, guys, that they're never going to stop. But in spite of that relentless attack we've seen from them, Mr. President, we appreciate your leadership. We appreciate your entire team's leadership, getting things done for the American people. And I think, as Dan said, I appreciate your work ethic. I know how hard you work for the American people. I mean, I know how hard Meadows works. He used to return my calls all the time. Now I know he's working 15 hours, 18 hours a day, and you're working even more. So thank you for doing all. The people in the 4th District of Ohio appreciate it. The people around the country appreciate it. And we just need to keep it up, and we'll have the great American comeback happening real soon.
Great. And you're right, Jim. I looked at this, I didn't even know anything about it. I see she's setting up an oversight committee. And I'm getting called by other countries saying what a great job we're doing. Could we have some help, sir, with testing? Your tests are better than our tests. They're the best tests in the world. We have the best tests in the world. We're the most tests in the world. Could we get ventilators? Is there any way our people are dying? Could we get ventilators? Everything. And they set up an oversight committee about the job we're doing. When she, a month later, was in Chinatown dancing, as I said, it's a disgrace. But what's even more of a disgrace is take a look at the people in the committee. They're the greatest Trump haters in history. Maxine Waters, every one of them is people that were screaming impeach before I even announced running. Now I kid when I say that because they'll say that's not true, but pretty close, pretty close. You know, if I say that, they'll say that's not true. They don't understand sarcasm in the press. But I will say, you look at some of the people in that committee, everyone is a total kill, and it's a disgrace. It's a disgrace that they could do a thing like that. And here we go again. Here we go again. But we beat them, and we've been beating them for a long time, and they cannot accept it. They cannot accept it. That's why it's interesting. I could work with the governors, and we're doing it really well. And they're saying great things about me and the job we're all doing. But you can't work with these people. I think they're stone cold crazy. Anyway, thank you, Jim, very much.
Mr. President.
Kevin, how about a little recap as to how you think we're going to do in that next year coming up?
Sure. Thank you very much, sir, and thank you. I'm humbled that you invited me back to pitch in this crisis, and honored to be here again with you. I think it's fitting that the members of Congress, thank you for coming back, that you would be meeting and working to make the economy better precisely today, which was about the worst jobs report ever. And that was something that we've been telling people was going to happen because you took the step to save lives, to slow the economy down. But there was a silver lining in the report today, ladies and gentlemen, that was really interesting to us, and the President and I talked about last night in the Oval, that almost everybody who accounted for the increase in unemployment in the report today said they expect to go back to work within 6 months. And now if that happens, then what will have happened is something historic, that we would have experienced the biggest shock in the history of the world, just about, I mean, short of perhaps World War, and recovered quickly. And I think that if we did that, sir, it's going to be because the economy was so strong in January, that people have been able to withstand this, and because the policies that you all worked together to adopt built the bridge to the other shore. Thank you, sir.
And at the same time, we would have saved millions of lives, because ultimately, that's what we did this for. But I heard that statement from you and some others yesterday that almost everybody expects to be back to work shortly. That's very unusual. Usually when you have something like this, they never expect to get a job again. So that's a great thing. Thank you. Good point. Thank you very much, Kevin.
Mr. President.
Thank you, Lee.
House Republicans are here in Washington, D.C. to work. We want to deliver for the American people, and we're honored to be here today, and hopefully the Speaker calls us back into session at the beginning of next week. We'll see. We should have been here this week. The Senate was here in Washington, D.C., but...
What is she doing, and where is she? What's going on?
You know, I actually think that she's just trying to consolidate more power in her own gavel. She likes the feeling of that gavel in her hand. She knows that the grip is being loosened, and come January of 2021, she's going to have to hand it over to Kevin McCarthy. And in the meantime, she is trying to consolidate as much power as she can. And when she brings her House Democrats to Washington, and there's a process where we're able to participate in crafting legislation, she won't be able to dictate as much of her obstructionist radical agenda that appeases an enraged liberal base that put that gavel in her hands in the first place. Many of us here in this room were with you on the beaches of Normandy, and we're honored to be back here today to be with you on VE Day. And not just as a member of Congress, but also as an Army veteran, I want to thank you for all of your support for our military. And in so many ways, our military was weakened before you got into office. And we saw a troop strength reaching levels that were pre-World War II levels. It wasn't just in troop strength, but it also was with our equipment. And whether it's support of the military, preparing our troops to win, understanding that you don't send our troops into battle unless they're sent to win. You send them to win or you don't send them at all, and you know that. And you've been following these principles of understanding our enemies don't respect weakness, they only respect strength. And as someone who's still in the Army Reserves, and knowing right now that we have men and women abroad, they can feel when they go to sleep at night, their parents can feel good when they go to sleep at night knowing that you have their back. And our greatest generation that fought for our freedoms and liberties 75 years ago, they fought for that flag and our Constitution and made this conversation today possible. I saw them when they were with you in Normandy. Those veterans calling out to you from that backdrop like they were 18 or 19 years old again. They just wanted a moment to share with their president, just to get a thumbs up back. They were little kids, even though they saved the world. And I want to thank you not just for setting up our military for success, but taking care of our veterans. Because when they come home, they should be treated with the love, dignity, respect they deserve on behalf of a very grateful nation. As a New Yorker, I want to say thank you for what was a phenomenal effort to deliver for us during this coronavirus outbreak. Between Suffolk and Nassau County, we had well over, as of right now, over 70,000 positive cases of coronavirus. Between the Comfort, the Javits Center, field hospitals, Army medics, when New York State asked you for public testing, immediately approved. They asked for private lab testing, immediately approved. They asked for semi-automated testing, immediately approved. I remember getting on the phone with Mark Meadows. We needed ventilators. The 4,000 ventilators show up within 48 hours. I remember getting on the phone late, it was 10, 11 o'clock at night on a Saturday with Jared. And we're talking about how the stockpile in Suffolk County was out of regular-sized N95 masks. The next day, you're here in the White House talking about how you're sending hundreds of thousands of N95 masks, and they arrive within the next 48 hours. And 250,000 surgical masks show up instantly. I get on the phone just a couple weeks ago with the Secretary of Treasury about the municipal liquidity facility that was set up to talk about how there's a need out there for these, a county like mine, not quite 2 million. We have a population of about 1.48 million. We didn't qualify for the municipal liquidity facility. Secretary Mnuchin, the night of getting the last bill passed, he is on the phone and he's working to take care of our issues. So with what Jared has done, and Admiral Polacek and Avi Berkowitz and others who were involved in that effort on the PPE, I want to say thank you. The Boeing Dreamliner is bringing PPE in right now that Suffolk ordered, and it's just a huge help. And the last thing I would say is this, and I stated the point about not just as a member of Congress, but also as a military veteran, thank you. I'll also say as a Jewish veteran, what happened to me when I was with you on Normandy, and many others who support you. And it happened again this morning when I put out a message about today being the 75th anniversary of VE Day. I got attacked as a Jew for supporting you. And the things that they were saying about you was so highly offensive to me. And there has never been a president ever who's had the back of Jews in this country and around the world like you have. And whether it was moving the embassy in Israel to Jerusalem, and signing the Taylor Force Act into law, and recognizing Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights, but most importantly, fighting anti-Semitism here at home. When I see them attacking me and attacking you, especially attacking you and your team, when you are all in more than any other president, not just delivering on your own campaign promises, but doing what's right and delivering on the promises of presidents in the past, I just want to say thank you. And the Speaker, we all should be in the same foxhole right now, with our rifles pointed in the same direction. And we're all here in the same foxhole with you, with our rifles pointed in the same direction. But unfortunately, while you recognize that the enemy is coronavirus, the Speaker believes that the enemy is you. And I believe that's really important for the Speaker to look around this room right now of people who serve in the House of Representatives who want to work today or in Washington today, that she needs to get her conference back here to fight for the American public as hard as we do. And I thank you for your leadership on all accounts and delivering for New York in what truly was a phenomenal way.
Thank you, Lee, very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. President. Warren Davidson from Ohio. Definitely an honor to be included on this task force and be here really to work with you to help this transition to greatness. You've had great messages. It's resonated with the whole country, but definitely with the people of Ohio. We love you, look forward to you coming back. And, you know, I think the example that you set when you talked about the governors leading the way, because the states really have had different experiences and different approaches to dealing with this virus, but also a legacy of dealing with problems in a different way. And you see the legacy costs in states like Illinois, where 58% of their budget goes to pensions, and states like Ohio, where we have a rainy day fund and we've reformed our pensions and have been responsible with our spending. That approach is important. It was important in the way that that Attorney General Barr has recognized in terms of defending civil liberties. Every single one of us wants to protect public health, and we're all anxious to grow our economy and get it back. But we all swore that same oath I swore in the Army, to support and defend our Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So we take that very seriously, and the civil liberties that have been infringed upon, the sense of freedom and the sense of identity as Americans that's under attack in this era. Having the Department of Justice say we are going to defend freedom and lead that example is a big deal. And as we confront all these ideas on how to deal with safety, it's important to remember that even the Patriot Act expansion, it was just temporary. It was supposed to expire. And a lot of those same sense of urgency that came in after 9/11 led to the expansion of the FISA and the Patriot Act and the way it was abused against many people and very publicly against you, was really just to keep us safe and just for now. But we still haven't really been able to reform FISA. We still have a chance to do that. But the temptation is always, but just to keep us safe. And some of the ideas with privacy, just to keep us safe at the CDC, tracing and quarantining and tracking everybody, it could be just as dangerous. So I think it's good to safeguard against that. And then I think the last thing is we're talking about VE Day. You know, the last time the planet had this much debt was after World War II, after the United States. So the Fed has been tremendous in trying to provide stability in the face of governments largely closing our economy. So we did owe it to people to try to provide the stability that we did. But most people realize that you can't print an entire year of GDP. So we do have to be cautious about unsettling the monetary system. It's worked great for us since Bretton Woods. We have been the world's reserve currency, and we wouldn't want to give that up by being foolish with the amount of printing we're doing, because it's not being lent. There's no lender. We're not really borrowing it. We're printing it. And that's undermining the value, the full faith and credit of the United States. We have lots of countries doing that around the world, and the dollar still is the strong one. But we should be cautious to think that we can somehow do this in an unlimited way. So thanks for the things you're doing and the leadership you're doing, leading by example, and it's an honor to be part of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Warren. Thank you very much.
Hi, Mr. President. Andy Biggs, Arizona. Thanks for letting me be here with you today. Thanks for coming to Arizona this week, being at Phoenix and Honeywell. Factory converted, doing 10 million N95 masks
Right.
On a regular basis, and there's going to be 10 more out of their Rhode Island plant. Thanks for being there. We had Sammy's restaurant from Tucson up, but we also had several Latina business owners there that are strong supporters. And why are they supporters? Because of the economy that you built and you put in place. And Arizona's ready to open up. They're energetic. They want to open up. They have faith and confidence in you and your leadership because they know what happened before. You built a marvelous economy, lower taxes, reduced regulations. That really did a great number for our economy, and that's fantastic. I'll tell you, we are just as frustrated that that Speaker Pelosi won't bring us back to do work that we need to be doing. We need to set the example for the American people that we're ready to be here. If you can go to Starbucks coffee, as Kevin said yesterday, you should be able to come to Congress. So just so you know, the House Freedom Caucus we had a meeting last night. We'll be meeting every day next week here in Washington, D.C. We want Speaker Pelosi to know we're ready to work. We come to work. We represent the people. Thanks for your leadership, Mr. President.
Thank
it's an honor to be with you.
Very much, Andy. Thank you.
Mr. President, Andy Barr from Central Kentucky, thanks for your leadership and for inviting us here today. I want to share with you 3 quick stories from my district that illustrate how effective your administration has been in responding to this public health emergency. These stories have not been reported by the press, so I want to direct these stories to the press because they need to know how effective you all have been in responding to us and the American people. First is Dr. Mark Doherty, an epidemiologist at Baptist Lexington, largest private hospital in my district, a nationally known infectious disease expert. He comes to me in March, early in the pandemic, and he says, we can do convalescent plasma therapy. He was one of the first epidemiologists in the country to want to do this. He went to your FDA, sir, and within 4 hours received approval to do convalescent plasma therapy, saved 2 lives on Sunday night. The approval was on Friday. Second, he comes to me and he says, we can save personal protective equipment if we use telemedicine within the hospital. The problem is we need approval from the federal government to do that. So we go to CMS, to Seema Verma, and we say, we can do a Bluetooth stethoscope with an iPad and telemedicine and FaceTime. We don't have to send all of the healthcare workers into the negative pressure room. We can bring modern technology to the fight against COVID. We can protect healthcare workers, and we can conserve critical personal protective equipment. Within days, Seema Verma and her team at CMS responded favorably. That is a nationwide policy change that saves lives for healthcare workers and conserves scarce personal protective equipment. And then the next story is Steve Stone from Nicholasville, Kentucky. He works for Sagent Pharmaceuticals. He comes to us and he says there is a critical shortage of the sedative propofol, which is used for COVID patients on ventilators. In New York, by the way, there was a shipment of a month worth of propofol that was held up by the government of Italy. So we got on the phone with Admiral Polacek from on your team on Saturday morning. On Tuesday, he had talked to the State Department and had the Italian government release to New York life-saving propofol for intubated COVID patients in New York City, a month's supply. And that was your administration and Admiral Polacek responding instantly to that request. And then the third story is Secretary Mnuchin and his team, and Mark Meadows. We had a small business owner who was not approved in the first round of PPP because he bought the business after February 15th. But this is a 35-year-old business, a dozen employees, $60,000 a year jobs, a small business publication. We went to Mark Meadows, Secretary Mnuchin, his team, and within days, they changed the guidelines, frequently asked questions, new guidelines. We saved 12 jobs in Lexington, Kentucky because of your decisive action. So, Mr. President, thank you for the effective response to this pandemic and this crisis.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Andy.
Well, good afternoon, Mr. President. Scott Perry from Pennsylvania. I want to first thank you for acknowledging those NCAA championship wrestlers from Penn State. Jim Jordan, of course, as you know, is a big fan of those Penn State wrestlers. Mr. President, thank you so much for your bold, visionary, decisive leadership. It has made a huge difference in Pennsylvania. Representing across the PPP in particular saved countless jobs. It has been a lifeline for across the country, across our state, and of course running it through the local banks, getting government out of it, letting the banks, our local community banks handle that has been it's because that's who people know. They have a relationship, and the bankers, of course, know them. And so that's worked really well. But I will tell you, in the transition to greatness, what I don't think we did envision is the same bold vision and leadership that you have had in some of our state governors. And right now, just last night, our governor announced that we in Pennsylvania are going to stay locked down until June 4th. Mr. President, our businesses are dying. And I don't know what, we shouldn't have to make this choice. We're Americans, and we can do 2 things at one time. You have proven you can do many things at one time and be effective. We have about 65% of our deaths in Pennsylvania happening at elder care facilities, at assisted living facilities, not in hospitals, but at these elder care facilities. The PPE is going to the hospitals, the money a lot's going to the hospitals because we shut them down. The governor has made a choice, instead of helping some of these elder care facilities, we have a website where people can snitch on their neighbor who's going to work or who is opening their business in contradiction to the order. That's not bringing anybody together. So a couple things. Extending the PPP, the 8 weeks.